Nancy Guthrie was a fixture of the local parish. Throughout her 35 years in the Catalina Foothills, her community relied on two unwavering truths. Her dawn walks preceded the desert heat, and her presence at Sunday Mass remained a constant. There were no exceptions. It was absolute. Neighbors calibrated their own lives by her schedule, the same pew at the same hour. She had occupied that residence since 1990, never deviating from her path until Sunday, February 2nd, 2026. That morning, Nancy's seat remained vacant. The congregation sat unaware of the psychological horror that had unfolded 12 hours earlier within her home. No one glimpsed the masked intruder with the Ozark trail pack or the weapon secured at his waist. No one noticed the crimson stains congealing on her entryway under the bite of the morning air. The only known fact was that Nancy Guthrie was missing from her habitual place, a breach of routine unseen for 35 years. Our investigation now enters its fourth evening. We previously examined the meticulous planning, how the perpetrator monitored Nancy's movements, and waited 4 hours in the shadows before striking at 2 a.m. Tonight, the focus shifts to the aftermath of that Sunday daybreak. This is the instant the investigation evolved. Yilma, as the discovery on February 2nd compelled the FBI to take the lead from Pima County authorities. The nightmare was heralded by a single, unacknowledged telephone call. Before analyzing that Sunday dawn, one must understand the architecture of Nancy Guthrie's life, as her rigid habits ensured her family recognized the crisis almost instantly. Nancy was never a person who merely existed in the periphery of her own world. At 84, her clockwork existence, early strolls, Sunday worship, Saturday dinners at Annie's was a matter of public record. She belonged to an era where a telephone never rang more than twice before being answered. Her illuminated porch served as a safety signal for neighbors, yet that very predictability effectively marked her for a predator. Paradoxically, this consistency saved the investigation's early hours. Once Nancy Guthrie broke her pattern, the alarm was raised immediately. Saturday evenings were traditionally reserved for dinner at her daughter Annie's house, an unbreakable social contract. After the meal, Annie's husband, Tommaso, would perform the duty of driving Nancy back to her residence. January 31st proceeded exactly as expected. Tommaso entered Nancy's driveway, and she stepped out of the vehicle. He observed her enter the garage and waited until the door sealed her safely inside. At 9:50 p.m., the interior lights flickered on, and Tommaso departed the final confirmed sighting of Nancy Guthrie alive. 12 hours later, the world fractured. By Sunday morning, the family expected Nancy to appear for service. She failed to arrive. They dialed her number once, then twice. The third attempt yielded only silence. The call went to voicemail. Typically, a missed connection with an 84-year-old mother might not signify an immediate emergency. Batteries die and people occasionally oversleep. But those logic-based excuses did not apply to Nancy Guthrie. This woman never ignored a call, never slept late, and never abandoned her faith. Her children viewed her reliability as a law of nature. When the third call went unanswered, they raced toward her home. Imagine the drive Annie and her family navigating the ascent toward the quiet Catalina Foothills. Those suburban roads are desolate on Sunday mornings, framed by the unforgiving desert landscape. Saguaro cacti stood like ancient sentinels along the ridges as the sun began to warm the asphalt. It was a crisp February morning in Tucson. They arrived at the house Nancy had called home for 35 years. Within 14 hours of that garage door closing, a profound sense of wrongness permeated the air. It wasn't a single red flag, but a symphony of unsettling discrepancies. Minor details converged into a terrifying realization. The stillness of the entrance led their eyes toward the porch. There was blood, significant quantities that defied any attempt at a benign explanation. Droplets on the pavement suggested a forced movement from inside the home. We now know that blood belonged to Nancy. Pima County investigators confirmed the DNA match within the first week, cementing the forensic reality. On that Sunday morning, however, the family only possessed one horrifying certainty. Their mother was gone. Where she should have stood, only gore remained. This discovery, more than the abduction, changed the case forever. It wasn't the hours of stalking or the signal jammer that blinded the security cameras. It was this precise moment, a family paralyzed on a desert porch during a deceptively calm Sunday. Staring at the crimson stains on the pavement, the agonizing realization dawned. Something horrific had befallen the woman they loved. This is where the shadow of night 4 begins. Emergency services were contacted. At this juncture, the chronology becomes vital. The Pima County Sheriff's Department has withheld the precise moment that 911 call was placed. According to journalistic accounts from major outlets like Fox News and News Nation, and including NBC, the relatives arrived at the residence on Sunday morning, February 2nd, after Nancy missed her church service and ignored her phone. Law enforcement reached the property. They verified the blood on the entryway and proceeded to enter the dwelling. The scene discovered within remains shielded from the public eye. This silence is a calculated strategy, not a lapse in communication. When a disappearance suggests a possible abduction, detectives intentionally suppress specific details regarding the interior state of the home. This tactic serves a singular purpose: to either validate or dismiss potential leads during future interrogations. If an individual purports to know the internal specifics of that house, they possess information known only to the perpetrator. Verified reports indicate one thing clearly: the residence bore unmistakable signs of a physical altercation. During his initial briefing, Sheriff Nanos confirmed clear evidence of violence. Splatters of blood marked the front porch. Nancy's essential daily prescriptions, critical for her survival due to her pacemaker, were left behind. That specific discovery shifted the entire trajectory of the investigation. An 84-year-old woman dependent on a cardiac device does not simply walk away from her medication. She does not overlook it. She does not depart for a trip without it. Those pills are her lifeline. They represent the thin line between a functioning heart and a catastrophic failure. Once detectives saw the blood in the abandoned medicine, noting Nancy's absence from the grounds, the wellness check evolved into a criminal inquiry. A haunting detail lingers over this mystery. The medication sitting on that counter was no ordinary bottle of pills. Nancy Guthrie relies on a pacemaker to maintain her heart's rhythm. Without the necessary pharmaceutical support, the danger escalates hourly. Arrhythmia, physiological strain, and potential cardiac arrest. Every 60 minutes without that dose brings her closer to a medical crisis that cannot be managed remotely. The officers processing the scene that Sunday morning grasped the gravity of the situation instantly. There was no luxury of time here. This wasn't a standard report they could file and revisit on Monday morning. This was an 84-year-old woman facing a life-threatening medical necessity, gone from a blood-stained home in a neighborhood where every security lens had been systematically blacked out. The countdown had begun, and it had already been ticking for 14 hours before anyone realized the race was on. Local authorities reached out to the FBI. Why involve federal agents? Typically, local police manage missing adult cases on their own. Federal intervention is not automatic. It requires specific thresholds to be crossed. Transporting a victim across state lines or signs of professional criminal syndicates are common triggers. In this instance, the catalyst was the disturbing nature of the scene, the blood on the porch and the vital medicine left behind. By then, investigators had also retrieved a chilling image from a doorbell camera capturing a masked figure with a sidearm and tactical gear arriving in the dead of night. This was far from a botched theft. This wasn't a case of a disoriented senior wandering off. A predator arrived with a specific objective, took Nancy Guthrie by force, and left behind a trail of blood. The Bureau officially launched a federal kidnapping probe. Within 48 hours of Nancy's disappearance, the case escalated from a family worry to a full-scale federal abduction investigation. That rapid acceleration is telling. Former agent Jennifer Coffendafer noted this shift publicly. The FBI only intervenes when the evidence is overwhelming. For Nancy, the scene on that porch and inside those walls was more than enough. Yet one detail is often overlooked in the discussion of that Sunday morning. Those 14 hours. From the moment Tomasa saw the garage door shut at 9:50 p.m. Saturday until the family arrived Sunday morning, 14 hours elapsed. 14 hours during which Nancy was present in that house, and then she was gone. 14 hours where the intruder entered, spent 16 minutes inside according to the timeline, and vanished with an 84-year-old woman who requires daily medication to keep her heart beating. 14 hours passed without a single alarm. No neighbor heard a sound. No camera caught the exit because a signal jammer had neutralized every nearby device. 14 hours of absolute silence. Every minute counted because in abductions, the initial 24-hour window is the most critical. Federal statistics indicate the chance of a safe recovery plummets drastically after the first day has passed. Evidence begins to fade. The trail goes cold. The intruder flees, secures hiding, and destroys the trail. When the family found blood Sunday morning, the killer had a 14-hour advantage. Everyone was oblivious. It is the cold math of this case. The intruder didn't just plot the entry. He engineered the silence and the temporal gap. He knew Nancy would be undisturbed until Sunday morning. He used a signal jammer to neutralize his digital footprint. He realized the desert chill would mask the blood from view. His goal exceeded the mere abduction of Nancy Guthrie. He constructed a temporal barrier against any intervention. 14 hours provided a massive window for escape. Imagine the distance covered in 14 hours. A driver can reach Los Angeles or El Paso and cross into Mexico, located 65 miles from Nancy's doorstep. A perpetrator can easily reach a prearranged safe house. The surveillance on January 11th and January 24th involved more than just shadowing Nancy. They likely mapped escape routes, timed the commute, and verified the staging site was ready. By the time the family gathered on that porch Sunday morning, the suspect had likely vanished. Viewers following this investigation since the first night recognized the immense challenges at hand. The meticulous preparation, the jammer, the surveillance, the 4-hour vigil. This was calculated, not impulsive. Tonight, consider two things: the killer's cold precision and the family's total heartbreak. While experts scrutinized timelines, forensic evidence, and security tapes, Annie or Cameron Guthrie stepped onto that porch Sunday morning, saw the stains, and knew their mother was gone. Not just missing, gone. No note mentioned a friend's house. No packed bags waited by the door. There is no benign explanation for blood at an 84-year-old's home at 9 o'clock Sunday morning. Only crimson stains and silence remained in the house she occupied for 35 years. The Pima County Sheriff conducted his initial press briefing 2 days later on February 4th. We examine that briefing tomorrow in Part 5. Sheriff Nanos's words and silences defined this 52-day-old investigation. Before moving forward, focus on one Sunday morning detail that gives Nancy's family hope she is still alive: the blood spatter. Ex-FBI profiler Jim Clemente scrutinized the evidence using law enforcement descriptions. He noted the droplet pattern suggested an injured person moving rather than a fatal trauma. The spacing indicated walking or being led rather than a body being dragged. Dr. Michael Baden, a renowned forensic pathologist, observed that pale centers in the drops suggest they dried partially between falls. This implies the events on that porch occurred in distinct, timed intervals. This evidence suggests Nancy was likely conscious when she crossed that threshold. She was moving, perhaps guided. She left her home alive, yet stolen. This critical detail shifts the case from recovery to a rescue mission. Nancy Guthrie left alive. The blood, the pattern, and the forensic experts all verify this fact. 52 days later, the FBI still pursues a rescue, motivated by the stains found that Sunday. Consider one final point. On the day of the discovery, Savannah Guthrie, Nancy's daughter and former Today Show anchor, walked away from her career. She left her national post for Tucson to find her mother. She abandoned the spotlight, the prestige, and the platform to plead for information in a desert neighborhood. That choice was made the moment she learned of the horror on the porch. When blood stains the concrete and medication sits abandoned, nothing else matters but the mother who raised her. She is still out there, her survival dependent on medicine untouched for 52 days. To those watching this series, I have a request. Find Evidence HQ and watch Night 5. It arrives tomorrow. The sheriff's initial press briefing held a subtle, accidental disclosure about her prescriptions. That single sentence would fundamentally reshape every subsequent theory in this mystery. Should a witness possess any knowledge regarding Nancy Guthrie's sudden disappearance, reach the 1-800-CALL-FBI hotline. $1.2 million is promised for her safe recovery. The secrets of that porch are known. Somewhere, an individual holds the key to Nancy Guthrie's location today. The story of Nancy Guthrie is a haunting reminder that the very things that define our lives, our unwavering routines, our predictable kindness, and the comfort of our habits can also be the quiet vulnerabilities that a predator exploits. It is a profound tragedy of the double-edged sword of consistency. Nancy's life was a masterpiece of reliability. Her neighbors calibrated their clocks by her dawn walks. Her family knew her heartbeat through her Sunday worship. But in a world where we value being known, we must also learn the vital importance of strategic unpredictability. The most heartbreaking lesson here is the golden hour of action. When a loved one's law of nature is broken, when that phone rings 3 times without an answer, Every second is a gemstone we cannot afford to lose. Nancy's family acted instantly, and that intuition is a powerful weapon. Let this be our wake-up call. Trust the silence. If the routine breaks, don't make excuses. Act. Secure the digital shadow. In an era of signal jammers, human connection is our only fail-safe. Be each other's sentinels. Community isn't just about knowing someone's schedule. It's about noticing when the light doesn't turn on. Nancy is still out there, a mother whose survival depends on a heart kept beating by medicine she never intended to leave behind. Let her story remind us that vigilance is the highest form of love.